Hi everyone. So my name is Mushfiq Mubarak and I'm a professor of economics in the Department of Economics and in the School of Management. And I was recently given the honor or the punishment of leading the South Asian Studies Council. It is kind of odd for an economist to be doing this because we're not organized in an area study sort of way. You know, in economics, unlike some of the other social sciences, we're not area specialists. I'm not a specialist on any part of the world, including or excluding South Asia. So I'm trying to learn a lot. And I thought it would be a great idea for us to get started on, for me to learn about what everybody around the campus is doing. So especially, I know some of the econ students who are here, but especially students who are outside the field. And I also predicted that it would be difficult to get all the faculty together in the same room at the same time, which is why we're recording the presentation. Okay. And so in order to make sure that the recording is done well, why don't you? Yeah, this is on. So when you come up, so please use the mic, and that way the audio will carry well into the recording, and then we can send out the link to the faculty as well. Okay. And the idea is, really just an introduction. We're not asking you to defend your thesis here. Just give us a sense of what you're working on. That would be useful for your peers to know and for the faculty to know, just so that it makes it easier for you to have conversations with people around the university, across disciplines in the future, so that, in the next couple of years, if you come up with a new idea in your field and you remember that, oh, there's somebody else in the university who's also working on something related or may have access to some data, right, or some other resource that might be useful. So that's why we're creating this, and hopefully, if it works out well and all the technical details work out with the recording, we'll put it up on the website. We'll have the faculty watch it. That way, it'll be a good store of information for us. And then I'll see if I can get the faculty to do something similar as well. Okay? Just so all of you know what faculty around the university are doing as well. Okay? So we'll go in the, we have these slides one after another. So we'll go in the order that is listed on the program, as well as which matches with the slides. And just come up, and it really is supposed to be 1 minute, because if I try to get the faculty to watch, I can't send them a 2-hour-long video. And so try and be succinct and give us the main point of what you're doing, because this is just supposed to be an introductory conversation, right? Okay, so let's get started. Is it Lina? Yeah. Okay. You can do it.
Hi, my name is Lina DeNani, and I'm a 6th-year graduate student in religious studies. I'm currently working on a dissertation on the hymns of a scholar monk from the 12th century. His name is Hemachandra. And I'm looking specifically at one hymn called the Vitaraga Stotra, which is the hymn to the dispassionate one, or the Jinna, the 24th enlightened being of Jainism. And I'm looking particularly at how he wrote this hymn and used this hymn not only as a ritual text, but also as a literary text in order to supposedly convert a Shaivite king to Jainism. And Hemachandra was a prolific writer. He worked under the reign of 2 kings, King Siddharaja and Kumarapala. And it was for King Kumarapala that Hemachandra wrote these hymns and wrote a large biographical text called The Lives of the 63 Illustrious People, in which he also inserted his hymns. So I'm hoping to look at the way in which he wrote these hymns to negotiate the religious space of the Jains within this complex religious context. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Bhumika, and I'll just keep it very brief to what I did this summer. I'm a 3rd-year student in sociocultural anthropology right across the street. Because I still don't know what dissertation will look like. This is what I did this summer, was to look at how the social history of Shramdan, which is donation of labor, or the gift of labor as it were, plays out in the context of road construction in the Kumaon Himalayas in India. And for that, I was basically trying to look out for old histories, archival records, which give me a sense of that. The idea is to, in a sense, also then configure a broader history of public works and the way we see it now and the way it happened sort of in post-colonial India. The point of doing all of that is to understand what are the different kind of labor regimes that one can see being played out in something like road construction, especially because most of the accounts of transport in India or South Asia happen to be about railways. So I'm trying to also see what is it that, becomes different when we look at roads compared to railways, etc. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Dipin. I'm a second year in the political science department. My research interests are largely around civil conflict in South Asia. Mostly I'm looking at how insurgent and state actors interact to produce a variety of patterns in conflict, including violence, counterinsurgency, transitional justice. I think for counterinsurgency, largely, I'm interested in looking at the conditions under which states decide to violently repress versus accommodate conflicts. For transitional justice, I'm interested in the conditions under which such mechanisms come up versus fail to come up in post-conflict settings. Thanks.
Amar Nam Dhruv, Ebong Rajnaitik Bigan Bibage, Ami Ekjon graduate Chatro. So my name is Dhruv Sharma. I'm a PhD student in political science, and I study politics and violence in South Asia and in West Bengal in particular. And so this past summer, the South Asia Council supported me to study Bengali through the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which will be particularly helpful for studying the political parties of West Bengal and leveraging the different Bengali language sources and being able to conduct surveys and one-on-one structured and unstructured interviews with officials, voters, and that sort of thing to try and get at the different dynamics driving patterns of violence in West Bengal and more generally across multiple cases. So yeah.
Hi, my name is Fahad. I'm a second-year PhD in the political science department, interested in themes of political violence across South Asia and also the conflict that's going on in Afghanistan. I'm also interested in preference formation amongst strategic elites, particularly when it comes to decision-making and the foreign policy choices that we see state actors make in South Asia. I've also been involved in track 2 diplomacy between India and Pakistan for the past 4 or 5 years, and that's something which informs some of my current research interests.
What does track 2 diplomacy mean?
So track 2 diplomacy is basically unofficial dialogue that takes place, and it feeds into official dialogue mechanisms.
Hi, so my name is Gaurav. I'm a 5th-year economics department student, and I've tried to categorize my research. It's pretty random and all over the place, but one primary research interest is on labor and development economics, which focuses on a bunch of things trying to understand what are the constraints to firm growth and employment in developing settings, particularly India. And especially what I'm trying to work on now is how new technologies, especially the internet, are changing the way that people sort of search for jobs and how firms recruit people. And a secondary set of research questions that I'm also interested in are to look at sort of these long-term effects of policies and institutions, and in particular, for example, like how dowry has evolved in India over time. Another thing with respect to sort of agricultural storage and production practices that have been prevalent in India and how they're changing over time. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Gotham Nair. I'm a 5th-year political science PhD student, and my research is examining the effect of growth on political change in India, and particularly the extent to which we observe a shift towards economic voting. And contrary to my initial expectations, what I've found is that political competition primarily revolves around the provision of private goods rather than focusing on things like health and education. And so this particular part of my dissertation examines the public provision of private goods, which is the provision of things like, pressure cookers, fans, laptops at huge scale, sometimes reaching millions of beneficiaries. While these programs are not necessarily efficient or redistributive, they are extremely useful from a politician's perspective because they're highly targetable to particular groups of voters. They are easy to credit claim on, and they provide the opportunity to kind of forge links with firms and interest groups. So in order to address a number of questions, particularly the conditions under which voters support these programs and the conditions under which politicians supply them, I use a variety of sources of data, including survey data, conversations with bureaucrats and politicians, and a study of a program that eventually distributed 15 million color TVs in Tamil Nadu. So, thank you.
Hello. My name is Gaurav Krishnan. I'm a second year in History of Science and Medicine. So my my research interests broadly are sort of changing health policies and the political history of health policy in India after independence. And at the same time, I'm also interested in sort of doing bottom-up history and how certain political paradigmatic sort of political changes in health policy shape understandings of health in low-income families. So these two are the things with which I'm grappling right now. This summer I was in Delhi and Calcutta, mostly in Delhi, and yeah, I did sort of my pre-dissertation, hoping to do go back and do sort of more archival work next year. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Louisa Cortesi. I'm finishing my PhD in the Department of Anthropology and in the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies here at Yale. My work focuses in North Bihar, an area which should be probably of everybody's interest right now. It is recurrently flooded every year for several months and several times a year. So in this place, I basically ask, how do they do it? What does it mean to be under floods continuously? And how do they survive? And what do they learn in the process? So I look at water and I follow it from the inundation that comes from the river into the aquifer, into the stagnant and putrid fields and waterlogged patches, through the technologies that they use to access contaminated water from the aquifer, eventually into their glass, in the glass that they use to drink. My work is heavily committed to interdisciplinarity, so I try to combine the theoretical and methodological approaches of anthropology with environmental sciences of water, such as biochemistry, hydrogeology, and humanities, such as philosophy, in particular epistemology, and linguistics, in particular semiotics. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mohit. I'm fourth year in the History of Art department, and my dissertation looks at the city called Daulatabad, which is in Maharashtra, and it's a medieval city that was a site of importance to several dynasties, the Khiljis, Tughlaqs, the Bahmanis, and the Nizam Shahis. My dissertation will basically look at the city as though it was sort of coral reef. So I'm sort of looking at this cross-section and seeing how these dynasties situated themselves in relation to each other and what kind of architecture they built at this most eminent of Deccani cities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sasha Wall. I am a third year in American Studies and also pursuing the certificate in Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. I am in the pursuit of my orals exams, and so I categorize my research in terms of fields. I'm thinking about Asian American Studies and looking at transnational religions in the South Asian diaspora. So I'm thinking about Sikhs and Muslims as they move across borders, particularly in North America. And I'm thinking about questions of like state and communal violence. My current project is looking at the ways that gender and slow violence intersect for people who are migrating post-1984 from Punjab. And so I'm thinking about how transnational feminism is moving across borders.
Hi, I'm a second year PhD student in the political science department. In the past, before I joined Yale, I focused on policy research, mostly in the area of public finances in India, as well as urban governance, with some overlap, especially at the local municipal level. At present, some of my work and interests relate to electoral competition and service delivery in India, which mostly comes from my earlier work. And I'm also interested in understanding the dynamics around coalition governments at the national as well as at the state level in India. And apart from India or outside of the South Asian context, I'm also working on a project on referendums, which looks specifically at national level referendums that have happened across the world, and the related party politics and voter behavior. Thanks.
My name is Shekhar Singh. I'm a third year PhD student in the political science department in the comparative politics subfield. And I essentially focus on parties, elections, and voting behavior with a regional focus on India, but also comparatively looking at the United Kingdom and United States. I am principally interested in within party and cross-party competition and looking at how political actors are motivated to behave in institutional settings within the party and across parties, And I have a couple of projects ongoing on trade preferences and environmental politics, looking at the difference between dictatorships and democratic responses to these problems, as well as how trade preferences are shaped in developed contexts like the United States, with measures such as outgroup anxiety and information paucity. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shivangi. I'm a second-year PhD student in sociocultural anthropology. So for my PhD project, I want to study the category of what we call as tribal artists in India, and the various practices of production, commerce, display, distribution, and definition that exists across the country. There are two components as I see to my research. One is the historical component, which is to look at how the contemporary visual and political understanding of what is tribal has come about. And the second element is the ethnographic element, which is the institutions through which the Indian state speaks to these tribal artists, and what are the various social mobilities of these contemporary tribal artists. For this, my site over this summer was this museum in Madhya Pradesh, Bhopal, and I'm looking forward to exploring it more over the next few years. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sophia. I'm a second-year student at the Department of Sociocultural Anthropology, and my research involves looking at land conflicts on the outskirts of the capital city of Delhi in a state called Haryana. And it's a state which is marked by very uneven geography. So we have places like Gurgaon, and then there are smaller towns like Manesar and Rohtak that I'm looking at. And I'm looking specifically at how legality kind of intersects with the question of land, because there are a large number of legal disputes surrounding state-led land acquisition and land acquisition by the state in conjunction with private entities. So I'm trying to understand who are the different actors who are litigating around these cases of land acquisition, and identifying not just local landowners, but also the real estate brokers and middlemen who are involved, and how they kind of shape the value of land and how they help in the transformation of land into property, as well as trying to understand who are the different state actors, the range of bureaucratic officials who administer and manage land. And the larger goal of the project is also to understand the nature of this very space on the outskirts, and whether it kind of qualifies as an urban enclave or an urban village or a small town, or what kind of literature that exists and how one can engage with that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tanmay Sharma. I'm a first-year PhD student in anthropology department. Since I'm in first year, this is basically, I'll just speak about the work I have done till now. So I've kind of looked at how water, weather, agriculture, infrastructure, I mean, these four things come together in South Asia at the current moment. And I have looked at the large dam as an infrastructure which kind of came about as an infrastructure of promise, and then how it's moved from the paradigm of perennial irrigation to a paradigm of perennial energy, because there's a structural shift in the large dams that are being constructed in South Asia now. And then also, like, look, I've looked at, through some fieldwork in Assam, the issues of flood and erosion, which kind of sometimes are induced by large dams, and what I've called economy of disappearance, this material loss of life, livelihood, land, and life worlds, and then the attendant agrarian transformations that are happening in the Brahmaputra Valley. Now, I'm interested in actually looking at the broader picture of what can be called the uncertain monsoon in South Asia, and what could be the limits of governance in such a situation. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Donna Bane. I'm a third year in the history department, and what you can see here is a very tentative outline or table of contents for my dissertation. I work on South Asia in the 17th and 18th centuries in the context of both the global British Empire and the Persianate world. In the course of this dissertation, I'm trying to think about why the company state or the British Empire in South Asia in the late 18th century becomes increasingly authoritarian, centralizing, and exclusionary. And while asking this question, I'm also trying to argue that this is not the only model that is available. And in order to do so, I'm trying to look beyond relationships or decision-making channels just between London and Kolkata and think about the broader expanse of the territories of the East India Company, from St. Helena in the South Atlantic to Bencoolen in Sumatra, as well as the other presidencies such as Madras and Bombay, which are subordinated to the authority of Calcutta. Equally, I'm trying to think about how tributary states and allies of the British, such as the state of Awadh and the state of Arcot, are equally involved in this process of state formation and are putting forward claims and arguments for what this state and empire could look like. And in order to do that, I'm trying to very much sort of deploy a Persian archive. One of the images that you can see here is a multilingual text featuring both English and Persian. Anyway, thanks for listening.
I'm Vatsal Naresh. I'm a second year in political science, and I'm interested in understanding why violence and democracy often subsist, and how we might make democratic institutions and democracies less violent. To that end, the project that I'm most excited about at the moment is understanding, for instance, why fewer Hindus speak out against lynching, and what the sort of mechanisms of conformism are that prevail often in democracies. One of the other projects that I've been very excited about is about shared sacred sites. That explores religious sanctuaries and spaces that are holy to multiple groups. This, of course, is one we have an exhibition on in Thessaloniki that explores them in the Mediterranean, but it's also an ongoing project that explores what's happening in South Asia. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Yagniseni Datta. I'm a first-year PhD student in the history of art. I'm primarily interested in Mughal art and architecture, and I would like to focus on the networks of exchange and encounter between the Indian subcontinent and the Persianate world from the 15th to the 17th centuries. I'm interested in the pluralistic nature of South Asian society, especially the assimilation of Hindu and Islamic traditions in art. I would like to also problematize the idea of globalization as being a contemporary phenomena by revealing the interconnectedness of these two regions through the continual flow of people, ideas, and objects. An example of a strand of inquiry that I would like to pursue is the reception of the Persian language, stories, and paintings that come together in illustrated manuscripts produced by both the Mughals and the Deccan Sultanates. The image that I put up here is of Jahangir triumphing over poverty. That's the Indic personification of poverty, poverty or daridar. And it in some ways mirrors or echoes Ramayana illustrations that also depict Ram and Lakshmana triumphing over the Rakshasas. So these are the kind of contexts that I would like to look into. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zabe. I'm a second year in history, and particularly in the global history stream. I look at anti-colonial thought and practice in the early 20th century, particularly interested in how various anti-colonial movements intersected with each other. I want to do this by creating a cast of characters, radical intellectuals, but also artists, workers and feminists and others who from South Asia, Latin America, North Africa, and elsewhere, and to understand their interaction in the cities of the global north, particularly in London and Berlin, and but also seeing how there is both an imaginative geography at work, but also a real geography of people moving, not just revolutionaries, but along with the revolutionaries, you have a network of surveillance. So this is also a story of the policing and the making of a counter-revolutionary force. Thank you.